Hello again. I'm sure that many of you will have noticed that there is something a little peculiar about the figures relating to immigration to the United Kingdom, as we receive them, that is, from the government. There is a very noticeable pattern. First, some number for net migration to this country is released relating to a period of a year, ending a while ago, say June 2023. This figure is exceedingly vague, rounded up to the nearest 10,000. We might perhaps be told that net migration for that period was 650,000. Then, a few months later, it is said that this first figure was horribly inaccurate for some undisclosed reason, and that the actual figure is 50, 60, 100,000, 200,000 higher than was at first claimed. We are never given an accurate figure. It is always rounded or estimated, and it always turns out months later that this figure was in any case hopelessly out. This makes it very difficult to work out by what number the population of the country is actually growing, because other statistics also appear which seem to contradict the first two or three figures which we've been given. Some people claim that this is part of a deliberate policy by successive governments to conceal the true extent of immigration to the United Kingdom, and that by giving us a stream of estimated and inaccurate numbers in this way, it makes us confused about how many people actually are coming here. Although this sounds like some kind of a conspiracy theory dreamt up by members of the far right, those who suspect that this is going on are quite correct, and it's easy enough to prove this. Before explaining why, I want to ask viewers to consider this question. The civil service today is equipped with far more accurate systems to record information, collate it, and transmit it from one part of the country to another than was the case before the First World War. I think this is undeniably true. In the years before 1914, records were written laboriously in ink in huge ledgers and then collated by teams of men working without computers or even calculators. The results of their record keeping and calculations then had to be sent by post to London and collated with information from other parts of the country. A complicated and slow process indeed when it came to making any calculations relating to how many people were entering or leaving the country. These days, with almost instantaneous electronic communications, laptops, spreadsheets, email, all the rest of it, such things can be done at pretty much the speed of light. I hope we all agree about that as well. Let's look now at quick, accurate figures relating to immigration and how they were collected, put into order, and combined into national totals, depending on information from various ports, in 1911, 3 years before the outbreak of the First World War. On February the 8th that year, an MP asked the then Home Secretary, Winston Churchill, how many aliens landed in the United Kingdom during the year 1910. Aliens is simply the old word for foreigners. Let me quote Churchill's answer. According to the returns received, the number of aliens who entered the United Kingdom in 1910 was 610,776. The number who left the United Kingdom, 597,506, and the difference between the two is 12,270. A little over a month after 1910 had ended, the precise figures for immigration were at the Home Office and publicly available. No rough estimates mind, but down to the very last person, 597,506. It took 5 weeks to compile these accurate figures, which amount to over 1 million arrivals and departures. Now consider the case of the modern figures. In May 2023, the Office for National Statistics announced that net migration for 2022 was 606,000. They now say that the figure was actually 872,000. In other words, they somehow mislaid the details of over 250,000 people that year who came here and have only just found them. Does anybody believe this? I'm quite sure that nobody does. There are two possible explanations for this state of affairs. The first is that the collecting of figures for those entering and leaving British ports is actually less efficient now than was the case before the First World War. With all the computers and other electronic gadgetry, we are now less able to keep records and carry out calculations than we were in 1911. That sounds to me most unlikely. The only other possible explanation is that we're being lied to and deceived, and the government is really playing with us by releasing ludicrously low figures for things like net migration, and then adding hundreds of thousands to the numbers when we are looking elsewhere. These are the only two possibilities, and those who reject the idea of a witting and cold-blooded conspiracy by the state must conclude that our civil service and its ability to carry out simple arithmetical operations is in a far worse state than it was in 1911. In the description to this video, I give links both to the part of Hansard, which records Winston Churchill's announcing of the immigration figures for 1910, and also a little bit about the jiggery-pokery with the 2022 net migration figures.